Okay, so get this, you guys. Remember the FAA outage that grounded all domestic flights for hours? Well, they're still not sure if they can rule this out as the possibility of a cyber attack on the United States. Some say that this was the hackers' way of testing out our systems, meaning that this was just the opening shot of what experts are actually predicting could be a brand new cyber attack or a cyber pandemic aimed squarely at the good old US of A. More proof, just notice how Bank of America has been reporting a lot of issues with people's bank balances lately. Bank of America CEO issued a statement about the future of money as well as new policies that could greatly impact lending and banking. This all happened while CEO Brian Moynihan was in Davos, Switzerland at the annual World Economic Forum meeting, of all places. Now, as we step into 2023, we will witness more and more instability in the banking system and a possibility of increased cyber attacks as stated by Newsweek and many other mainstream news sources. We are witnessing what could very well be the collapse of the banking system as we know it. What will emerge from that? That has yet to be determined. And shortly after that collapse, the US economy. But what do you guys think? Is it time that we finally start stocking up on essentials like what we've been talking about? What I can say for sure, some of the richest and most powerful people in the world are all discussing something frightening, and that could possibly happen in our future. So let's see what they got here. So the question is, were the FAA and the US flights hacked? They're definitely not ruling out the possibility, but let's hear it straight from a former FAA official.
Right. We've got a lot to cover with this. Of course, Tom talked about the unanswered questions here. What caused this unprecedented decision to literally ground all domestic flights for several hours? Let's bring in former FAA Administrator Randy Babbitt. Thank you very much for joining us. Any clue as to what happened here, or what are you hearing from your sources and colleagues?
And just to follow up on what we've heard now from Tom Costello as well as Steve Ratner, who's been flying for 30 years. Tom says, like Ratner, pilots have never heard of anything happening like this before. What could have caused it?
That's a great question. I'm sure there's a lot of people at the FAA asking that question. I don't know whether it was a simple mechanical failure, something, in the computer, internal workings, a software problem, hacking. I wouldn't rule anything out at this point, but it's an incredibly important system because every flight to every airport, the pilots have to know if there's anything that's not operating up to standards at that airport, and they get a notice to the airman that perhaps, one runway, the electronic approach system isn't working properly. Well, they have to know that. They have to plan their fuel loads and things like that to compensate.
Now, could this be the start of the cyber pandemic that we mentioned? Well, the White House is certainly not ruling out anything. Now, according to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, the FBI is conducting an investigation into the cause as well as the FAA. He said, quote, "We're not prepared to rule that out. There is no direct indication of any type of external or nefarious activity. But how is it possible for there to be this level of disruption?" End quote. Thousands of flights were delayed. Some of them were outright canceled during the FAA chaos that happened. Retired Navy Admiral James Sturvis, the former top officer of operations in Europe, he commented this on Twitter. He said, quote, "The airline national stoppage may or may not be a cyber attack. But even if it's not, it certainly shows us what one could look like. Good wake-up call," end quote. So yeah, that level of disruption certainly hints at something intentional. You know what I mean? A former U.S. intelligence analyst who went private wasn't too sure about a sinister cyber plot, but they did warn, quote, "If you're looking for cybersecurity angles, I think it's this. We live in an increasingly complex, interdependent system that is prone to unforeseen consequences and cascading failures," end quote. So if one of these systems goes down, the whole U.S. economy could give out. You know what? More and more of my friends are telling me to just keep minimal funds in my bank account, just enough to cover my monthly expenses. We're hearing more and more about the inner workings of the World Economic Forum, and that's not good. Just keep safe out there, you guys. And always make sure you're updated on the latest news. Make sure to stay subscribed and make sure your notification bell is turned on. You guys know what I'm saying? Now, speaking of cyber attacks, have you logged into your bank account and found unauthorized withdrawals? Has the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, said that someone used your social security number to get a tax refund? Are debt collectors calling you about debts that are not even yours? If not, consider yourself lucky. Millions of people fall victim to situations like this through identity theft every single year. In the current digital age, identity thieves and hackers can steal your personal information like emails and social media passwords through the internet. And this can have serious consequences, and the risks of being a victim of identity theft, they're even higher for those who use social media. Hackers can tarnish the reputation of the victim or even cost them their job by impersonating them on existing or newly created fraudulent accounts. Dealing with identity theft can also have a huge impact on personal relationships as it creates stress, and it might even require seeking financial assistance from loved ones during the recovery process. So my question for you is, what are you doing to protect yourself and your family? If the question is nothing, then I highly recommend that you check out the sponsor of today's video, Aura. So here's how it works. Aura continuously monitors the dark web looking for your emails, passwords, and social security numbers, and sends alerts fast to your phone or email whenever they find anything. Aura also gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries, like if somebody was opening a loan or credit card in your name. Aura automatically sends requests on your behalf to data brokers to remove your information, helping to reduce the amount of spam and robocalls you receive. Aura's VPN allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and your personal information safe and encrypted. And Aura's antivirus software can block malware and viruses before they infect your devices. Identity theft is so common that there's a new victim every 14 seconds. It costs the average victim well over $1,000. And so that means that since I've been talking about Aura today, 5 people already had their identities stolen. Now, of course, you wouldn't get phone insurance after you dropped your phone and cracked the screen, right? By then, it's obviously too late. And the same thing goes for identity theft. Protect yourself and your family from identity theft at aura.com/Ron Yates. You can also hit the link in the description down below and go to aura.com/Ron Yates. And if you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with my link, so that you can see for yourself how many times Aura finds you or your family members' personal information on the dark web. And if you sign up, go ahead and let me know in the comments if your personal information was compromised. You will not regret checking. Now, according to White House Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, quote, "There is no evidence of a cyber attack at this point." But this begs the question, would officials know it if it were? I mean, would they even disclose it to the public? Just take a look back at, 2015? It took the FAA 2 months to disclose that hackers had planted malware in one of its computer networks. Now, what mainstream media didn't tell you is that on the same day that the FAA crashed, hackers posted more than 120,000 records stolen from the San Francisco Bay Area Transit System's police department, took down websites of 8 major Danish banks, including the central bank. They even broke into military and government agencies in several Southeast Asian and European countries. No small undertaking. They also hijacked the cloud computing platforms of Microsoft and Salesforce, making off with millions of dollars worth of untraceable cryptocurrency. And guess what? That was just on January 11th. Every day of the year, hackers unleash a stream of major attacks against government agencies, companies, and individuals. Last year, they took down emergency services, threatened regional power grids, disrupted patient care at major hospitals, brought trains to a halt, took over radio stations to sow panic among listeners with a fake crisis. They set off air raid alerts and attacked U.S. nuclear scientists. So far this year, hackers broke into the communications firm Slack and stole email addresses of more than 200 million Twitter users. It says here, more than 70 million Americans are hit by cyber crimes every year. These are people who are defrauded, spied on, or publicly humiliated by having their private photos and other information published online. Can you imagine if someone hacked your phone and just published all your private photos on the internet? Whew. Some experts believe that just about every large organization and government agency has been breached. That's how enormous and constant cyber attacks have become. Last year, 22 billion personal and business records were exposed in hacks on U.S. companies, and that doesn't even include the breaches that were unidentified or unreported, which is probably an even bigger deal since the government just can't even keep up. I mean, seriously, can you imagine the likes of Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, and Joe Biden wrapping their heads around these high-level hackers and what they're doing? As bad as it's been, it's only getting worse. According to security firms that track attacks, the number of breaches, which have been growing by 15% a year, it jumped by 38% in 2022. The cards are just stacked in the favor of the hackers. Now, aside from Congress and our own government not being able to understand the gravity of the situation, hackers also now have pretty big anti-US backers like Russia, China, North Korea, and other nations providing shelter and funding to massive ranks of hackers in their country. And people are just happily hooking up tens of billions of new gadgets on the internet, each of these gadgets providing an entry point to the computer networks. I mean, how many of your friends and loved ones have smart homes already? Imagine if hackers took over your house. You might not even be able to get out the door. Bank of America Chief Executive Brian Moynihan, he said, quote, "It's time they align capitalism with what society wants from it," end quote. So what exactly does that mean? Moynihan's basically saying it's crucial that sustainability and ethical standards becomes official and global. But some are saying that this is just their usual theatrical preamble to set up their own cyber attack and their own social credit system. Case in point, I got an email from one of you guys talking about how hard it is to get banks just to give you your money. Here, let me read this for you guys. My mom has a very sizable savings, which is greatly needed as she also has dementia. My sister and I finally got her to sign a power of attorney, but it seems the banks are putting up every roadblock possible to prevent us from accessing her accounts. I thought at first it was just standard procedure, but I'm now starting to think it's so that they can confiscate the funds. Add to that how the Fed is just hammering hardworking Americans with those high interest rates. Federal Reserve policymakers signaled that they will push on with more interest rate hikes, with several supporting a top policy rate of at least 5% even after inflation shows signs of having peaked and economic activity is slowing. Here's an actual quote from Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester. Quote, "I just think that we need to keep going, and we'll discuss at the meeting how much to do," end quote. Yeah, sure. Just keep going until the lower and middle income Americans zero out. Is that what they're saying? Then, of course, there's the debt limit debate that's threatening to tip us over into just chaos and financial catastrophe in 2023. Big, huge investors and bank economists are using financial models to predict when the United States, which borrows money to pay its existing bills, will run out of cash. They are assessing what it could mean if the government is unable to pay some of its bondholders and the country defaults on its debt. Bank of America analysts wrote in a note to clients that a default in late September or early fall is likely, while Goldman Sachs called the possibility that the government would not be able to make good on its bills a greater risk than at any time since 2011. This is when, for the first time in history, the U.S. credit rating was downgraded and markets responded with pretty steep drops. Finally, lawmakers had to blink and get their acts together. And let's be clear, America hit its technical debt limit on January 19th. The Treasury Department will now begin using extraordinary measures to continue paying the government's obligations. Now, these measures are essentially fiscal accounting tools that curb certain government investments so that they can continue to pay their bills. Those options could be exhausted by June. Once the government exhausts its extraordinary measures and runs out of cash, it would be unable to issue new debt and pay its bills. The government could very well wind up defaulting on its debt if it is unable to make required payments to its bondholders. Now, aside from missing out on Social Security and Medicare payments, this could also be economically devastating for the entire country and could even plunge the globe into a financial crisis. Fed Chair Jerome Powell, he called the possibility of having to save the Treasury from debt loathsome. Then, of course, there's the idea of minting a $1 trillion coin and depositing it into the Fed. Kind of sounds like a very silly idea, but basically exploiting a legal loophole to raise money to keep paying the bills. But this is something that the finance world calls silly gimmicks and cheap legal tricks, and that's only slightly better than default. See, even with short-term bandages, investors might lose faith in the government, leading to higher financial costs for the nation. Like they said, quote, "You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again if you default on the debt," end quote. My advice? Make sure you always have some dry powder for the markets, meaning cash is king, guys. Now, aside from investing in the stock market and real estate, we should all be definitely working on keeping multiple streams of income and cash flow going, be it through side hustles like Uber Eats or DoorDash, or opening up a small business like everybody's favorite sweet potato pies, right? And hey guys, our comment section is always wide open for you. If you want to learn more about this or any other money-making news or ideas, side hustles, online businesses, you name it. Definitely a much watch in our next video. Make sure you are subscribed and you have your notification bell turned on. But for now, I hope you guys got all the information from today's big money update and daily news report, the threat of a cyber pandemic, possibility of the US economy defaulting and ultimately collapsing, and the debt ceiling default that makes us want to stash some cash. Also, remember to protect yourself and your family from identity theft today. And if you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with my link, aura.com/Ron Yates. There's a link in the description down below. Get your free 2-week trial from Aura. Big thanks for tuning in today, and an even bigger thanks for hitting the like button. Appreciate you guys. Be kind to one another. Lots more exciting updates on the next one. Be safe.